I don't know if you guys heard by now, but King Yella just had his car shot up out in San Bernardino, California. What he was doing out in San Bernardino, I'm not sure. I thought he was staying in Vegas, but anyways, man, for just to clear this up real quick for people that don't know what's going on, King Yella, he's not STL. Let me just get that out of the way first and foremost. He's a GD like they are, in STL, but he's not STL. He's from a set called Skeezy Gang. It's over at 73rd and 8th. It's not too far away, but it's like a totally separate hood. How he met Duck and them, I don't know. He was a little bit older than Duck, but how he got involved with the FBG, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's a different gang. Same gang GDs, but different set. But anyways, man, he was out in San Bernardino, California, and he had said, and this is according to an Instagram post, that he was driving along with his girl and with his kids, and the car was shot up by people who he identified just as Mexicans. He didn't say if they were gang members or, what particular area they were from or anything like that. He just identified them as Mexicans. Later, he got back on social media and clarified that he was not talking about all Mexicans. He was just talking about the particular people responsible. This video, I actually intend to be a little bit more of like a discussion and a dialogue between you guys. So I like you guys to hop in the comments and give me your feedback. And, then I'll try to respond to some of the comments. I'm just basically getting it started with this video because he touched on something and he kind of brought something out that's always there a little bit under the surface. In Chicago, it's there. I know in LA, it's there too. And in a lot of other cities, I think it's from what I've heard, it's there too under the surface all the time. And that is, the tension that exists between ethnic communities, especially I would say in 2023 between black and brown, between like black and Mexican. This is something that we saw surface a couple years ago after the riots, after George Floyd got killed. I've touched on that in a couple of videos, man. But this is something that it like flares up at certain points. In Chicago, the communities on the south side are not totally segregated, and when I say segregated, I don't mean like officially enforced by the government segregation. I'm talking like people tend to just live in the same community. Like there's black communities, there's brown communities. The whites, I would not say are totally segregated from the Mexicans. The whites and the Mexicans tend to live together, but the black neighborhoods on the south side of Chicago are they're pretty much exclusively black, although some other people are starting to move into a lot of those neighborhoods now. That started to happen like in the last 10, 20 years. And a lot of the black people from those neighborhoods too have started to move into other people's communities outside in the small towns. There's a lot in Northwest Indiana. The demographics of Chicago are changing and of the surrounding suburbs. I think it's something like 300,000 black people have moved out of the predominantly black areas of the south and west side over the past 20 years into other ethnic communities. And the redlining that used to go on, and I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but this is related to the topic of the video. The redlining that used to go on officially, like enforced by the government, 50 years ago, it's not on the books anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't, if it's discovered that was happening in the courts, that's going to be a loss for the people that were trying to do that. You know what I'm saying? In 2023, you cannot legally enforce that anymore. And a lot of people, too, there's still racism. So, the racism manifests itself in various ways. But again, if that's uncovered in the courts, you can win that. So in this day and age, a black person that has the money is going to be able to find a place, like in a area where other ethnic groups live. They may not be able to, have quite as many options as a white person or a brown person or an Asian person would have with the same amount of money, but they're gonna be able to find something. There's no rich black people that are stuck in the hood because nobody will sell them a house in a nice area. And what that's meant is that these communities are getting more integrated now. You see this all over the north side in Chicago. So I would say that the tensions are going down. One thing that's taking place is that interracial relationships and interracial marriages are going through the roof. I mean, through the roof. And the biggest increase in interracial marriage is among black Americans. This is all, guys, again, I'm saying this related to the topic of the video because the Mexicans, in response to King Yella's post, were getting upset and offended. You know what I'm saying? And so he had to clarify it with that other post, saying that he wasn't generalizing to all Mexicans. But as I was saying, I see black Mexican relationships Black Puerto Rican relationships all over Chicago now. Both genders now too. It's way more black men, with women of other races, but the black women are starting to get on that too. When I was a kid, and I'm 41 years old, I was born in 81. It was extremely rare. As a matter of fact, I think I can count on one hand the number of times that I would see a black woman with a guy of another race until probably the late 90s. Like from the early 80s to the late 90s, I think I can count on one hand the number of times that I saw that. I would see the guys with women of other races, but I wouldn't see the girls really doing that. Now I see it everywhere. On my own block, there's black women that are with white guys, and I see black women with Asian guys, Latino guys. So black, Latino, black, white marriages are increasing. The mixed population is skyrocketing. It's going through the roof. That used to be, a strong social taboo. You listen to my interview with my mom. She's talking about growing up in Garfield Park, where it was an integrated neighborhood back in the 50s and 60s. That was a very strong social taboo. Nobody was doing that or even considering doing that. In this day and age, once that social taboo was lifted, the guys first and then the girls following them, started to get on that, and a lot of families now are much more accepting of that. So that's changing the relationships between the two communities. But as I say, the guys who are in the streets always tend to stir stuff up and kind of ruin stuff for the rest of the communities. Because the last time that this happened here, like I said, this was a couple years ago. Apparently, there had been some looting going on that some of the guys on the south side in the black community had done to try to go and do in the Mexican neighborhoods. Now, I never saw any video evidence of that, but that was the reports that I heard. And then the Mexicans, and this was specifically the Kings. I don't know if any other gangs specifically were involved. I don't think the 2-6 were involved. It was like specifically the Little Village Kings that started to basically attack black people coming through their neighborhood. And that prompted FBG Duck, who's an associate of King Yella, to make a video where he was doing the same thing that Yella just did, which is where he was, I don't remember the exact words he used. He was saying like, we gotta go over there and fight these guys, like, talking about Mexicans, like he was just using the word Mexicans and Hispanics. He wasn't saying specifically the Little Village Kings or anything like that. He was just saying Mexicans and, saying that they need to go over there and fight them. One thing that I've learned, and I've learned this as a YouTuber, if you don't want to offend people, and maybe you don't care about offending people, like maybe you want to offend somebody or, don't care about offending somebody else. But as a YouTuber, this is one thing that you learn over time when you're reporting news. If you want to avoid offending people, you have to be very careful with the identifiers that you use to mention somebody. When you talk about somebody, there's a number of identifiers that you can use, to ID them. You can use their gender, their race. If they have a gang affiliation, you can use that. You can use the particular part of the city where they're from. You can call them a north side or a south side or something like that. You can use their age. You can just refer to them as a kid or an old person or whatever it might be. You can use all these different aspects of a person's identity. When you use a particular aspect like that, you tend to make all of the people who share that aspect of that person's identity feel unfairly accused of whatever that person just did. This is what I learned by trial and error over the years. And so I learned if you want to avoid offending people, you have to be as specific as possible and narrow it down as much as you can when it comes to identifying the person. There was a lot of times, when I'd be reporting an incident, because I'm doing reports all the time about, people getting shot, people getting robbed, people getting raped. So I would title the video, or I would have on an Instagram post or something, like a black guy just shot a Asian guy or something like that. And I would always get people in the comments, get DMs from black guys talking about, why are you calling him black? Like, why does that matter? Why are you calling it out? And I would tell them, bro, that was the description the police gave. They said it was a black male, 5'8" to 5'10". I said, I'm just repeating what the police, and they would be upset with me. that I had referred to him as a black guy. They would not like the way that I used that identifier exclusively to describe him. So, I learned over time to try to be as specific as possible. The media often does this, and it often stirs up a lot of racial tension and racial beef. Especially the liberal media, especially does it with anything involving like a white person and black people. They almost always do this. You'll notice, like whenever a cop would shoot a suspect, they would name the race of the cop and the suspect only in the case where the cop was white and the suspect was black. If an Asian cop or a Hispanic cop or an Arab cop or some cop of some other ethnicity would shoot like a white suspect or a Hispanic suspect, you wouldn't see like the race mentioned of the police officer or the suspect. They would only do that in the instance where the cop is white and the suspect was black. They would only name the race of the offender and the race of the victim in instances of interracial violence where, again, it's that same combination. It stirs up a lot of tension because, and a lot of times as whites, the liberal media is doing this, and these are white people behind these decisions to use these terms, and then we end up taking that anger out on black people when they're not even the ones that decided on that title for the news report. And it stirs up this beef between people, man, and it's unfair and it's unfortunate. King Yella, he's done this a couple times. He dropped a Black Lives Matter video where, ironically, he was shot, and we don't know who the race of the shooter was in that particular instance. He was shot while filming this Black Lives Matter video, and in one of the lines in the video, he was saying, "Whites killing blacks. This is messed up," and a lot of white guys were like, "Dude, what are you talking about? Whites killing blacks?" Or like, have you looked at the stats for interracial violence? Like, we're not out here like doing. Whites were getting offended, and then he clarified it again in the comments. He was talking about like, I'm only talking about the whites that are doing that, and now he's kind of done this with Mexicans. I'm not going to point the finger at him because, again, like I said, I've done this plenty of times. Just identifying people by their race when I'm talking about somebody did something. But that's something that I've learned to, like I said, to be more specific about. When Duck had said that about the Mexicans on the South Side, the 2-6, I was getting like comments from the 2-6 talking about, that was the Kings doing that. If Duck had wanted, we would have rode with him against the Kings. But he had to group us all together and call, just refer to Mexicans. And so, he started an unnecessary beef with us for no reason. There's street stuff that keeps a lot of this stuff stirred up too, because the Kings get down on GDs, period. Like wherever they see GDs, they get down on them. And a lot of times, they identify or assume that a black guy is a GD. Why they do that? I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know. Some of them do that, some of them don't. But I've talked to a lot of black guys that have been chased, and like these are guys that weren't on nothing. You know what I'm saying? And like guys have told me that that these guys will attack them when they come to their neighborhood, and then I'll talk to the Mexicans about it, and they'll say, we're at war with the GDs, and I'll be like, well, he was just black. He's not a GD. And they're like, well, we thought he was a GD. I mean, it's like they'll just assume that a guy's a GD. And again, it's street stuff, but then it turns into this racial beef. In California, that was going on a lot too, as a lot of Mexicans were starting to move into the Compton area and into LA. This is like back in the 90s. There was a lot of racial tension going on between black and brown. This is something that used to happen a lot with whites back in the day. I had done a video on the race riots in 1919 with the Irish. Today, in 2023, you don't really see that anymore with whites and blacks in the streets anymore. You see whites and blacks go at it politically mainly now, but as far as the streets, you don't really see it anymore. The white gangs really kind of dissolved like in the 90s. The only white guys that are really still gangbanging now are like members of Latino gangs. Overall, today in Chicago, what I see, at least on the north side, I see everybody getting along pretty well. Whites, Mexicans, blacks, Puerto Ricans. As far as other Hispanic ethnicities, like they have in New York and LA, they're not real deep. The ones that are deepest over here are Mexicans, Puerto Ricans. I mean, we do have some Dominicans and Salvadorans and other people, but it's mainly Mexicans and Puerto Ricans. Those are by far the deepest. As far as blacks, American blacks here are by far the deepest. I know in New York they have like a huge Caribbean population, like Jamaicans and Haitians. We have that here too, especially on the north side, but nowhere near as deep as New York. The vast majority of black folks in Chicago are American, like what they would call foundational black Americans. We do have a big African population, a lot of different African immigrants on the north side, but they tend to live more amongst whites. You don't find a whole lot of them on the south or west side. They tend to, the Somalis, the Ethiopians, the Ugandans, the Nigerians. You find a lot of them in like the Rogers Park area, the Uptown area, and now a lot of them are starting to move out into the suburbs, into the Skokie area. And everybody gets along great. I mean, the Africans, the Latinos, the Asians, the whites in those areas of the city, everybody gets along great. The only place where I really see that going on is like out south, as far as like racial tension and beef. Up north, you had that for a little while off of like Clark Street in the Rogers Park area, but that was like mainly gang stuff. That was really gang stuff because there were Hispanic guys that were on the side of the black gangs, that were members of the black gangs, that were actually fighting against other Hispanics, and then you also have black guys that are like, rock with the Hispanics that were, going. It was more street stuff than racial. But yeah, let me know what you guys think though in the comment section, man. What are race relations like? How do you think this thing can be, totally squashed? Social media and various the internet itself, just in general, is facilitating a lot of that. You have people able to meet and interact that were never able to really meet and interact before because they were in these like isolated communities. And if you're talking about this kind of thing in public, if somebody does something to you, or if you get robbed, or because that type of thing is happening a lot in Chicago nowadays. I would say if you don't want to like cause any throw any stone into the pond that's going to cause a wider ripple effect and cause tension, be very careful with how you identify somebody. Like I said, and be as specific as possible because people feel unfairly accused when you use these broad terms. Anyways, man, let me know what you guys think though in the comment section, man. Your boy Winnie C. Report. I'm out.